take this opportunity to remind members that musical chairs and not standing up when you're supposed to stand up is very confusing for the speaker's chair. You know you have a 2-minute response. If you don't stand up, I can't recognize you. And then other members stand up, so it gets very confusing in here. You know the rules, and I don't want people playing games and wrong people standing up when they shouldn't. Thank you. Further debate. The member from Thornhill.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I want to say at the outset that I'll be sharing my time with my colleague, the member from York Simcoe. And the first thing I want to comment on is the fact that I listened with interest to my colleague from Ottawa Centre. And while we don't agree on many things, I certainly understand the passion that he displays. I understand why he believes what he believes, but I have to say, with respect, that I don't believe what he believes. What I believe about this bill is it's not really about seniors. It's not really about helping the trades. What it's really about is politics. It was indeed the very first bill that was tabled in this House when the new session started back in December. And my colleagues on the other side want to say that it's a good bill, and I'm sure from their perspective they can sell that concept. And it seems we've heard that we have support for their bill from the NDP, even though in discussions in committee, we heard the same kinds of concerns expressed by the NDP that were expressed by my party. So I'll be rather interested to see whether the NDP actually votes with the Liberals or abstains. But that's another thing for another day. The point is this, that helping seniors is an essential aspect for me in being a member of provincial parliament. Helping people who are less capable is an important aspect for all of us. And so for me, that's both ends of the age scale. Seniors have less opportunity to go out and do for themselves. Young children have less opportunity to do for themselves, so we have to provide help for them. And my colleague, who spoke quite eloquently in his 2-minute contribution to the debate from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, said it very well when he talked about slicing the onion, peeling away layers. This is an incredibly thin bill, and I'll explore this more significantly as I go on in my comments. This is a very thin bill by the time it gets to the people it really purports to want to help. So helping seniors is an issue of great importance for us in the Progressive Conservative Party. It is for us in our constituencies, as it is for all members in all parties. And this is particularly apparent to me in Thornhill, where we have an aging population, where we have many baby boomers approaching the age that qualifies them as seniors. I moved to Thornhill in 1983. I was a man in my 30s. That's when the expansion of Thornhill was encompassing people of my generation. So those people, you're asking me how old I am now? For me to know, for you to find out, but let's just say I'm qualified for old age supplement. The bottom line on this is that entire area of Thornhill and many other areas are occupied by people who have been in homes for approximately 30 years, who want to stay in those homes and who want the opportunity to do so. And I think in most cases that this bill doesn't afford them that opportunity. All in this legislature know that my party has the best track record for standing up for seniors. So whether we support this bill or not, there is no question that for time immemorial, this party has stood for seniors. And as I've mentioned in this House before, I myself have been responsible for introducing a property tax deferral bill for low-income seniors. I want to explore this a little bit more deeply because it's rather interesting. I introduced this bill twice. The bill was, unlike this bill, of no cost to the province of Ontario or to any jurisdiction whatsoever. All it did was say that if you wanted to stay in your house and you were a senior, very particularly a senior who in the recession period suffered and had a problem meeting all of the commitments that go with home ownership and home occupancy, you could defer the payment of your municipal property tax at a cost okay, at a cost, an interest cost, that was commensurate with interest costs across the board, and that the province would support it unless and until you sold the house or you passed away. So I presented that bill a couple of years ago, and it was shot down in flames for a variety of reasons. And at the time, I made copious notes on what those reasons were, went back to the legislative people, and recast that bill, and I addressed every single one of those concerns. Further, Speaker, again, in my quest to aid seniors to stay in their homes, I represented that bill with all of those exigencies covered, and I solicited the support of an NDP member at the time and of a Liberal member at the time. I'm going to tell you, Speaker, this bill failed as well. And that was the one and only time in the history of this legislature that a bill sponsored by all three parties, including the governing party, failed. How could that be? If you had consensus amongst the three parties, how could that be? Well, that was really simple. They decided that it was going to fail. It was such a good bill that the Liberal government obviously couldn't stomach the idea of someone else coming up with the concept, and they voted it down twice before they reintroduced it as their own, as a campaign promise in September of 2011. Speaking of which, Speaker, I'm wondering when the Liberal Party is actually going to introduce this bill as government legislation, because I'll stand up and vote for it. I can tell you, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. They can take anything they want. Just put that on the floor, because that's a good bill for seniors. It costs nothing, and it helps immensely. The bill that we're talking about today doesn't meet those criteria, and that's the issue. That's the issue. It's because of our party's support of seniors that I stand here today and I speak to Bill 2. As has been said, we are not supporting it, and I want to make it clear that you can be pro-senior and not support this kind of, let's call it liberal loot bag. That's what this bill is. It's something that sold well at election time, so they brought it in as Bill 2, the first bill after the basic bill that starts the legislature, and we discussed it briefly and went to committee. When we debated this bill in committee, the Liberal government showed absolutely no willingness to cooperate with the Ontario PCs or to consider recommendations that we actually had. Our party sought to provide what is needed for seniors while keeping a close eye on the provincial budget, because living within their means and on a budget is something that the Liberal Party considers, let's call it a suggestion instead of a rule to live by. That's not the way we see it. Seniors get it. Seniors get it. Yet seniors are the ones who foot the cost of pretty well everything, more than most groups. They're the people who have made the largest contribution, just by dint of their age, Speaker. They've been around long enough that they've paid the taxes. They've built lives, they've built homes, they've paid mortgages, they've brought up families, they've schooled their children, they've fed their children, and now they deserve a little bit of respect. This bill purports to give them that respect, but it's so thin in terms of who it serves that that's not possible. Perhaps this government should seek some input and some advice from the seniors themselves on how it's done, not from interest groups. The bill in third reading form that we are debating today happens to include amendments from the NDP, and these amendments, Speaker, and this is very important, have not been costed out. And this is a very important aspect of what we're considering today. During the course of study on this bill, when we were in committee, I requested on behalf of the PC party some costing. What was this bill going to cost? And I received three numbers. One was in arrears. In other words, what would it have cost to date, given the fact that the budget year ended on March 31st? What would it cost in the budget year that we've now entered? What would it cost in the ensuing year? I got three simple figures, but they were rather incoherent because they didn't connect to anything. I think that they were figures that were best guess estimates, because we don't know what the take-up on this is going to be. So let's just say that when I asked for the cost of this program during the committee discussions, the government provided three figures, but they provided an awful lot of rhetoric. In addition, if you take a look at the NDP amendment, which calls for what would essentially amount to some kind of an information line that uses an awful lot of verbiage to describe the drill down process, where do I go to get the best estimate for what it is I want to have done on my house? Where do I find a contractor who is a reputable contractor? How do I qualify? Am I qualified? All of the things that my colleague from Renfrew suggested probably would come to MPP offices to a great extent. That entire way of addressing this bill, which would probably be some form of government-operated call center, will have a cost attached to it that we have not been provided figures on, and yet here we are in third reading, and it winds up being part of what will undoubtedly become a fairly convoluted and difficult bill to administer with a cost figure that really isn't estimable at this point. Never was the actual or projected total cost outlined in committee or outlined before this chamber. Don't worry, we were told it is covered out of allocations that exist. That means that money that had been allocated to other programs, perhaps in other ministries, would be transferred, and there would be, we were told, no new net cost to the province. Well, you could get off on an entire tangential debate here and say no new additional cost to a province that's going into deficit this year to the tune of $15 billion. When our entire push for the past 6 months has been about controlling spending, that's an entirely different aspect of this, and one that we could well consider, because if you have money to allocate to this, better you allocate the money to pay down a deficit. In the midst of a financial crisis, how can the Liberal government expect any responsible members to vote for a bill without providing information on how much it will cost to implement? Okay, this seems to me anyway, to be a policy, a new policy of the Liberal government that we could charitably describe as, trust me, it'll be okay, we'll get it done. Because I'm debating a bill today that obviously, with the Liberal vote added to the NDP vote, is going to result in passage. It'll be through third reading sometime, next week? Maybe when we come back after the 1 week hiatus and before the House rises, and it's going to cost some amount of money to administer it. It's going to cost some amount of money in the tax credits, but we don't know what that amount is. So here we are. Without knowing what the true costs are, how can this government even hope to prevent the costs from ballooning to unaffordable levels? How? The government has not told anyone where the money for this program actually comes from, other than that business of being moved from other ministries and other allocations. I recommended to the repugnance of the Liberal committee members to hold back the payment, the bonus pay for parliamentary assistants. I said, parliamentary assistants get an additional $16,000 per year for being parliamentary assistants, and to my knowledge, absolutely everybody on that side who is not a minister of the Crown is a parliamentary assistant, save and except for one. That means everybody over there who's not a minister gets $16,000 additional dollars for that work. So I said, well, if you can't tell me where the allocation for this bill comes from, maybe I'd better move a motion that says until we find that out, we'd better take away the parliamentary assistant pay. Well, the motion unfortunately failed, but I thought it was a pretty good idea at the time.
I thought it was a great one.
And I might say, I'm no parliamentary assistant.
We're touching the whips there, Jeff.
So I get your basic MPP pay, and by the way, it's been frozen for 4 years. As I said the other day, no complaint, but I think it's important that people out there know that there are an entire raft of Liberal people on the other side who get $16,000.
The member is kind of really wearing this segment of his speech out, and he knows that he's not really dealing with the issue by talking about that particular item. So can we not go there? Thank you.
I accept what you say, Speaker, and I take your point. So I'll simply say that by going far afield, I was trying to call attention to the fact that there is money that's spent in different ways, and we could more easily and in a better way direct this to the bill. Now, if you look beneath the surface of the bill, to focus directly on the bill, and by that I mean look beyond the catchy title of the bill, Healthy Homes Tax Credit, you'll see that this bill, like almost any other introduced by the Liberal government, is essentially
The member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, he was warned earlier in the afternoon that was kind of like, don't do it again, and he went out and came back. That doesn't mean that that penalty still isn't in effect. Well, now you know. So, thank you very much, and I'm sure we won't be hearing much from you. Thank you. Thank you.
Speaker, thank you. Again, if you look at it beneath the surface of the bill, and I'm talking about beyond the scope of healthy homes tax credit, which is yet another Liberal attempt to make a bill sound palatable, you see that the bill, like almost any other introduced by this government, is essentially, it's empty. Now, many of the Liberal members will try to argue about what the bill's intent is. We want to help seniors. That's what they'll say. We do too. But let me say, not in the same way. News for you. Intent is not enough. The program has to actually deliver. It doesn't matter what the intent is. Some of the taunts that we had in committee were, you don't want to help seniors. That's not true. It's patently untrue. We want to help seniors, but we want to be effective in that. We want to be effective in everything we do in this legislature. And Bill 2 does not pass the test on that. We all know that there's a saying that says, the road to somewhere is paved with good intentions. That addresses the idea of intent. We've had over 8 years of Liberal intentions. And Speaker, look where Ontario has wound up. So intent, not too much. 40% of this country's population and in Ontario, and we're at the end of the line on employment insurance benefits. We're last. Let's now delve beneath the surface of the bill. Let's talk about the bill itself. Let's consider how much of an impact, if any, Bill 2 could actually have on Ontario families and seniors as a mechanism to stimulate the economy. Only seniors, first of all, that's 65 plus, as the definition would qualify for the tax credit proposed by the bill itself, which equals about 13% of Ontario's population. That's about 1.8 million people. So the broad base of seniors is 1.8 million people. So of all the people living in Ontario, the tax credit could potentially apply to only 13. The median senior income in Ontario, meaning that most seniors living in Ontario are in this category, is $25,000 per individual and $45,000 per couple. That translates into approximately $2,000 to $3,700 of income per month, depending on whether you're a single senior or a senior couple. In order to qualify for the maximum tax credit of $1,500, 15% of the maximum expenditure of $10,000, the senior has to actually spend that $10,000. So a senior has to actually have that $10,000. So when the senior spends that $10,000, he's actually out of pocket, she's actually out of pocket, the couple is actually out of pocket $8,500. So you've got to ask yourself again, if you're going to that thin edge of the wedge, after you look at all seniors being a global universe of 1.8 million, and you cut through the first layer, that layer is people who can afford any amount of spending, much less an amount like $10,000. It's a substantial sum of money, a nearly unreachable sum of money for many, 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 especially given the fact that savings have taken such a serious hit, Speaker, in the past few years, and the nest egg that provided the cash flow for many seniors has been very seriously diminished. And probably it's safe to say for no segment of the population more so than that segment, because if you were 70 years old and it was 2008, 2009, and you had to live, your income from the nest egg was zero, nada, nothing, and so you dipped into the principal, and what you've been left with, now we're in 2012, is a diminished principal that is yielding a diminished income. And not just any renovations qualify, so now we get to another thin edge. Only renovations that the Liberal government has decided are acceptable, or may decide through regulation are acceptable. So a senior living alone in the province of Ontario has to spend nearly half of his or her annual income to get back $1,500 as a tax credit. So my one-line rejoinder to that is, who are you guys kidding? Okay? Where's the take-up on this? How many seniors do you know who can put up nearly half their annual income for a renovation? Not very many. So the number of people that this program would in reality apply to shrinks again by a significant number. It's beginning with 1.8 million, but that drops based on incomes, drops based on marital status, and then as if that weren't enough, seniors receiving ODSP or ODSB benefits are excluded from qualifying for the tax credit, and that shrinks the pool even further. Then your renovations have to meet specific criteria. We haven't gone there yet, which means that those who could afford to renovate their homes, an even smaller fraction of those would get the refund. You get the idea? My friend from Renfrew spoke a couple of moments ago. That's you. I can't say your name, but my friend, the member from Renfrew, talked about the fact that there are seniors who have deficiencies in the homes that they want to stay in. Homes get old just like people do. So if you're paying for energy and you don't have windows that keep the cold out, and if you're paying for electricity where the rates continue to go up higher and higher, if you've got a furnace that isn't working and it absolutely is crying out for replacement, and that's before you get to any of the aesthetics, you don't qualify. You only qualify if you have an infirmity that means that you have to spend money that maybe you have and maybe you don't have that gets you up the stairs on one of those lifts, or a means to enter a bath appliance in a way that is such you don't have to lift your legs. Those kinds of things. You're cutting away and peeling the onion and peeling the onion. All you've got is a bud at the end. It's no longer a whole onion. That's the bottom. That's the problem. So the question I have, Speaker, the question I have, Speaker, is who actually benefits from the program? No, it's not true. It certainly doesn't help those people who need it most.
The Speaker would like them to go through the chair and not have cross dialogue. And the member from Renfrew is getting to the comedy, he's getting a little worn out with the silent routine. Please don't do that. Don't make a mockery of the chair. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you, Speaker. The people who are financially well off and can put up $10,000 to renovate their homes, they don't have to wait for a government check or a tax credit. They'd go and do the renovation in any event. That's what they do. Meanwhile, those who need the help, who cannot afford the renovations, who don't have the cash to do what they need to do, are still left sitting in the dust. This bill, at the end of the day, as I started out saying about 20 minutes ago, yes, it's basically a nasty piece of business because it addresses seniors and proceeds to deny the majority of seniors. And that's why I say, and that's why my party says, that this is a nasty piece of business, that this is a political bill. And most of what we hear from the other side is about politics. Seniors are also people who, more often than most, and I know we hear statistics such as the amount of medical care that you need at the end of your life is 80% in the last 20% of the years that you live. And that medical care extends, for example, to air ambulances like Orange, and we've been thwarted by that party over there on the issue of a select committee to investigate Orange. And so at this point I have to say, because of that, I move adjournment of the debate.
Mr. Shurman has moved adjournment of the debate. Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carries? I heard a no. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those in favor against will say nay. Nay. I believe the nays have it.